an original.
From Story Studio Network.
Welcome to The Fatigue Fixer, the podcast where we get real about why you're so tired and what you can do about it. Every 2 weeks, we'll gather here for honest, heart-to-heart conversations about reclaiming your energy, your patience, and feeling truly at home in your body. I'm Dr. Sarah Vadeboncoeur, a naturopathic doctor, business owner, and hockey and baseball mom. Over the past 15 years, I've helped thousands of women just like you cut through the confusion and finally feel like themselves again. And now, I want to hear from you too. Use the link in the show notes below to leave me a voicemail, to share your story, give feedback on an episode, ask a question, or tell me what's been exhausting you. And your voice might even make it onto the show. Together, we'll get to the root of what's really draining your energy and give you the tools, clarity, and encouragement you need to fix your fatigue. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Before we get into today's episode, I want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing these episodes with your friends and your family. And thank you for sending me messages about which episodes you love most and why. When I started podcasting, part of my motivation was a little bit selfish, that I just wanted another platform to talk and share my ideas, which I love to do. But mostly, it was because I wanted to let you in on some of the really powerful conversations happening in my office behind closed doors. And last week, I had a beautiful conversation with a patient about parenting. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Because I'm not embarrassed or afraid to tell you this, I find parenting really hard. I find parenting to be the most difficult role that I play every day. I was chatting with a friend recently after a long weekend, and I was sheepishly saying, I'm kind of ready for my son to go back to school. Like, I'm exhausted after parenting full time for 3 days. And she laughed. She's like, oh, I would pick parenting over work any day. And I was like, oh, I find parenting way more tiring than working. And part of why parenting is so difficult and so tiring for so many of us is that if you are the mom, you are most likely the default parent. And if you are not familiar with that term, the default parent is essentially the first in line or the go-to parent. And this can be true even if you have a super supportive partner. I have an incredible partner who supports me and our son in every way that I do. So he's fully present and doing all the things that I do. But the reality is, if my son gets hurt or needs a hug, he's calling out for me. If he's having trouble falling asleep, I'm the one he wants, not my partner. So many of us are that default parent. And there's many reasons for this. The first one is that it is generally assumed in our society that the mom is the go-to parent. I remember chatting with another mom at hockey last year, and she was shocked that my partner was the one who had gone to the parent-teacher meeting. And I was like, why is that shocking? But again, it's shocking because a lot of us assume that the mom is the one who is taking care of a lot of these responsibilities. And as a result of that, dads are treated as the secondary, less important parent. Then we layer in a lot of the more traditional gender norms that are still deeply ingrained in a lot of people's minds and beliefs. And then there is this expectation that we learn and that we often impose on ourselves as women and moms, that we are expected to put our lives on hold for our children in order to tend to their every need. And so what all of these different expectations do is they push a lot of us into something called overfunctioning. I think overfunctioning is one of the key reasons, and there are many, but one of the key reasons why so many moms are exhausted, because the way that we parent is exhausting. And a big part of that has to do with how we overfunction. Overfunctioning is doing more than is reasonably required, or doing things that other people are fully capable of doing themselves. I don't know about you, I do a lot of this. but we're going to talk today about how I have acknowledged that this is happening and how I'm trying to change this in my parenting with my son. So it obviously feels really good to help, right? Most of us want and enjoy doing things for other people. And part of that is, again, many of us were rewarded from a very early age for being a good helper, right? Since we were girls, we were told being helpful is a really good thing to be. So you're maybe listening to this thinking already of examples where you are doing things that other people are fully capable of. So I'll give you a few examples. A lot of the conversation today is going to revolve around food and cooking, because that's one area where so many of us overfunction in our parenting. So for example, my son drinks this vitamin C powder in water every morning before he goes to school. He's 9 years old. He is fully capable of opening this sachet, pouring powder in and adding water on top and stirring. He can do this. He's done it many times before. But sure enough, almost every morning I ask him, do you want your vitamin C? And then I go and I make it for him. Again, very nice, very lovely, but it's one example of dozens and dozens of things that he is capable of doing that I am doing for him. I am overfunctioning in that specific thing for him because he knows how to do it. He doesn't actually need me to do it. Same with putting peanut butter on his toast. He can do it and he's done it many times, but of course his line is, but you do it better. And I'm like, of course I do it better because I've been spreading peanut butter on toast for 35 plus, I don't know how old I was when I started putting peanut butter on toast. I'm like, you're just learning. But the more you do it, the better you're going to become. And then you'll be just as good as mom at putting the peanut butter on the toast. And maybe you're listening to this and you can't relate because maybe your kids are older, but a lot of us are overfunctioning with our older and even our adult children. Maybe you are paying bills for your teenagers or your young adult children. Maybe you are making their appointments. Maybe you're driving them around when they're fully capable of taking public transit. So this shows up in so many areas of parenting. And there are consequences to all of this overfunctioning. The first one, which is why we're doing this episode, is chronic fatigue and burnout. We know that parents often are burnt out not just because of what's happening in their work outside the home, but because of the work that's happening in the home. So when you are taking on tasks and responsibilities that other people are capable of, you are using your precious energy, which often you already don't have a lot of. You don't have a lot of extra energy, and you're using it to put peanut butter on toast for someone who's fully capable of doing that themselves. And then what often happens is we start to get resentful because, of course, we're like, why am I the one doing this when this other person is fully capable? And often there's a lot of resentment towards our kids, but even more towards our partners, especially again, if we are the default parent and we feel like every time somebody needs something, we are the go-to. It also makes it that most of us have less time and energy to care for ourselves. And that can create a big decline in our physical and our mental health. And then the way that we parent often takes a massive toll on our relationships. So if you're wondering about what overfunctioning looks like in your relationship, I want you to go back to episode 9, the one where you didn't sign up for this, with Dr. Tracy Dalgleish. She is an incredible couples therapist, and her and I talk about what overfunctioning looks like in relationships. So go and listen to that one. But what happens when we overfunction, specifically with our children, is that we create a dynamic that pushes our children into underfunctioning. Because when you overfunction, it doesn't just affect the load that you carry, it affects what your children come to expect. So when I make my son's vitamin C and I make his toast every morning, he knows that he doesn't have to do that because mom's going to do that. So now he becomes a bit of an underfunctioner because, again, he's fully capable of doing these things, but why the heck would he do it when he knows that mom's going to do it? And so it creates this really difficult dynamic because you keep doing the thing, so then they don't do that thing. And then if you try to stop doing that thing, there's going to be usually a lot of discomfort, the messy middle, which we'll talk about in a moment, where they're not going to pick up the slack right away. They're often going to resist and be really upset that they now have to take on this role. But the only way that we are going to stop overfunctioning and allow our kids to do things they're fully capable of is we have to start first. We have to be the ones to say, I'm not going to do things or as many things that my kids are capable of. I'm actually going to start putting them in charge of doing more of the things that they're able to do. We're going to take a 30-second break, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, I'm going to let you in on how to stop overfunctioning and what that's been looking like in our house recently. Feeling tired all the time isn't normal. It's your body's way of whispering, or sometimes yelling, help, and it's time to start paying attention. My Effortless Energy Reset is a 6-week online program that helps you unlock more energy, deeper sleep, and finally make time for yourself by learning to decode your body's unique language. It's simple, practical, and fits into your busy life and will actually help you shorten your to-do list, not add to it. And right now, when you use the promo code FATIGUEFIXER, you'll save $50 off your enrollment. Join today at fatiguefixer.ca/reset and start feeling like yourself again. If you're listening to this and you are acknowledging and realizing that there are probably, like many of us, and I include myself, many areas in your parenting where you are probably overfunctioning, we're going to talk about how we can stop doing that. So we're going to give more, I'm going to keep you in our kitchen because this is where a lot of this work is happening for us in our family right now. At the end of June, when school was starting to wind down, I hit my max for making lunches. I was still making my son's lunches, and I got to the point again where I was like, I'm tired of doing this. You are fully capable of making lunches, so we are going to have you start to make your lunch. And the way that I made this exciting for him is I asked him, what kind of foods would you like for your lunch? Like if you're making your lunch, what kind of things do you want in there? And he asked for a couple of things that were very reasonable and easy to get, and I got that. And literally almost overnight, he started making his lunches. And for most of the summer, going to camp, he made his own lunch because, again, he's fully capable. And for his birthday, we got him a cookbook, and we have been encouraging him to learn how to cook because I think this is a skill that everyone needs, and the sooner we start, the better. And he is, again, probably like your kids as well, way more capable than we give him credit for. He has been making his own omelets, his own pancakes. He makes smoothies. The other day, I offered if he wanted to make muffins. So we have this oatmeal chocolate chip banana muffin recipe that we make all the time. And I was like, do you want to make it? You're fully capable of making this. He said yes. So while I prepared dinner, he was beside me making the muffins. And this is where the hard work is, which is literally the messy middle. The messy middle is the reason that most of us avoid letting our kids do more. It's the reason we often continue to overfunction. And that is because when we allow our kids to start doing things they're capable of, we often feel guilt. We feel maybe anxiety if we feel like we're not giving them as much attention, or God forbid, we take our attention and put it on ourselves for a minute and not fully on them. And what I find fascinating is that parents today, if you're listening to this, you likely spend twice as much time with your kids as parents did in the 1960s. And yet we have these rose-colored glasses about what family life looked like in the 60s, that mom had all this time to spend with her kids and every family was lovely and perfect, which we obviously know that's not true. But I find it so interesting that on average, most of us spend way more time with our kids than previous generations did. And yet we still feel guilty all the time that we're not doing enough, that we're not present enough, that we're not there enough for them. We are there. The other reason that we kind of stay in this dynamic is that a lot of us are people pleasers. And kids, when you make them a sandwich or make them a snack, generally are quite happy and pleased about it. So there's this built-in positive feedback loop that when we do all these lovely things for all these people, we feel good. And again, I don't want to take that away from you. But if doing all these things for your family and your kids is draining your energy, how can we reduce that in a way that, yes, you still get pleasure from being kind and helpful, but not at the expense of your own health? Then there's the perfectionism and the efficiency. Now, I want you to picture a 9-year-old making muffins. There is splattered banana and flour all over the counter. There is stuff falling on the floor. There are things being imperfectly measured. And my perfectionist, efficient brain, who can make those muffins in 10 minutes because I've made them again 100 times, is watching this. And all I want to do is go in and help him. I want to make sure he's doing it okay. I want to make sure. And this is the hard work. This is where you got to watch the counter getting covered in flour. You got to watch your kids not measuring everything perfectly like you would. Because what is going to happen, and this happens to me still, is it triggers the I will just do it myself. The problem with I'll just do it myself, it is a trap. And it is a trap because when you feel like it is easier to do it yourself, which it is, that's why we overfunction. We are faster, we are cleaner, we do it the way we like it done. But the longer we continue to do things that our kids are capable of, the more we create this overfunctioner, underfunctioner dynamic. And the longer and deeper that becomes, the harder it is to break. So in that moment, when there is flour and banana all over my kitchen, I need to remind myself that yes, in this moment, this is not an efficient way to make muffins, but I am planting seeds that will benefit me and my son for decades to come. I need to be thinking long term. Because again, of course, it would be easier and faster for me to make the muffins, but that is not going to give him the life skills and the confidence that he is getting by making the muffins himself. And in case you need to be reminded, your kids are very capable. Our kids are capable usually of far more than we ask of them, far more than we let them do. And this again has been proven to me with all of the cooking that my son is doing, right? When he's using a sharp knife to cut something, of course my mom brain is freaking out. I want to hover and tell him not to cut his fingers off. And I'm turning my back because I can't watch him do it because I'm scared he's going to chop his fingers off. But he has proven to me that he is capable of safely using sharp knives and that he needs that for some of the recipes he's making. And so part of this is, again, a lot of work on our part is that we have to allow our kids to take age-appropriate risks. Part of why we overfunction is that we often are overprotective. We are afraid that our kids are going to get hurt. We're afraid that something bad's going to happen. We're afraid our kitchen is going to get messy. Letting our kids struggle is essential for their growth. It is essential for their confidence. And if your goal, which my goal, is to allow my child, to help my child develop into an independent, confident, self-sufficient person, me cutting his toast when he's 9 years old is not really helping with that. Now, that doesn't mean I'm never going to do it, but it means that that shouldn't be the standard or the expectation. The reason a lot of us overfunction and we don't let our kids do certain things is that we're all afraid that something bad is going to happen. We have this idea that if we let our kids leave the house or be independent or use a sharp knife, something bad is going to happen. And that is scary. And I fully feel and get that. I do want to highlight, however, that when we look at stats about crimes, they peaked in the 90s. That is when I was roaming around my neighborhood. I would have been like 10 and teenager in the 90s. Most of us who were kids around that time were roaming all of our neighborhoods. Our parents did not know where we were. We were biking. We were doing all kinds of things. And crime levels were actually much higher at that time. It just feels like everything is really dangerous right now because we see everything and we hear everything terrible that happens. But society overall is actually incredibly safer than it was in the past. I'll give you another example. My son, when he does this baking, sometimes we are missing ingredients. The next step that we've kind of been playing around with is allowing him to walk to the grocery store. So we live about a 5-minute walk from a grocery store. He has to cross a pretty big intersection at a light. We've practiced it, trained him. He knows how to do it. He's been doing that for a while. And he will go to the store with our debit card or some cash and pick up a few ingredients. And a lot of people would freak out if they thought about letting their 9-year-old go to the grocery store, because you might think, well, there's strangers and there's bad people out there. But again, this fear that we have about something bad happening to our children is a huge part of what creates this dynamic of overfunctioning. Now, if you think that I'm not anxious and worried when my son's at the store, I am. But that's not his problem. That's my problem. I need to do the work to get comfortable with the fact that my son, as he gets older, is going to wander further away from home. He's going to have more independence. And that he is going to do things that are potentially dangerous. And my job is not to protect him from every single bad thing that could happen. My job is to allow him to do age-appropriate things, to feel like what risk feels like and how to manage that. And what I find fascinating is that most of us have kept our children sheltered indoors because we're so afraid of what's happening outside. And yet we're giving them access to technology and screens which are far more dangerous. So I was thinking about this. Again, if you grew up in the 90s, the boogeyman of the 90s was the white van, right? The man in the white van. The man in the white van is not driving around the streets right now because there are literally no children outside. If the man in the white van is now on his phone trying to access people. So when we think that we are keeping our kids safer by having them in the house on a phone or a device rather than walking to the store, I think we've got it backwards. And again, part of why we do this is that we're just trying to be a good mom. We're trying to keep our kids safe. We love helping. We love doing things for our kids. And again, that's a beautiful thing. But I would ask you what the cost of that is to your energy and your mental health. And I want to explore this idea of being a good mom a little bit more because I think it's a great thing for you to take a moment and pause and reflect on what is your definition of a good mom? Because a lot of times it's driving some of these behaviors, probably subconsciously. So we're actually going to hear from one of our listeners, Janie, about her definition of what it means to be a good mom.
Hi, oh my God, I love the podcast. This is so cool. Okay, when I think of a good mom, I think of, well, my mom, actually. She was an amazing mom, but also just a selfless caregiver who puts the children's needs before her own. And she's full of energy and bubbly, and she's prepared, overly prepared, and has all the snacks. In full disclosure, I kind of am that mom, but I've been like reflecting lately on how the house comes before me, the pet comes before me, the baby comes before me. And then at the end of the day, I try to make time for myself, but there's just none left. And then funny story. So my mom was over and she was watching me do all these snacks and preparing for a road trip. And she's like, oh my God, you're like Martha Stewart. I'm like, what do you mean? Isn't this like what you would have done? You were like amazing. That's my memory of her. She's like, oh no, I would have just bought like the cheese and crackers pre-made, or I would have just brought the whole box of strawberries, you know? I'm like, oh. So it's just funny that my idea of like an amazing mom is my mom. And even she was like, I didn't even do that. Anyways, we were never meant to do it all by ourselves. I really think like we should have our own commune of just women, and we make different dinners every night. Everyone has a turn, and we just all help each other. And the older, wiser woman can help with the dishes and cleaning. Anyways, we're really out here doing it, ladies.
I love this message from Jenny. I think so many of us can relate. And what I find so interesting is one of the first words that she used to describe a good mom is the word selfless, right? Putting everyone's needs ahead of her own. And I always question and push back on that a little bit. And I think Jenny's coming to the realization that maybe that's not the best way to go about it. But that often is this image that we have in our minds, either because that's what we saw our moms doing, or the like mom online that we follow who seems to have everything perfectly organized all the time. But I would push back on that. Why is our goal to be selfless? Right? Jenny said it. Why are the dog and the kid and the house and the kitchen, why are all of those needs more important than mine? And what does that mean for not just my long-term health, but also the long-term health of my kids when I am constantly burning myself out and overdoing it, right? We literally, a lot of times it feels like we are erasing ourselves in an attempt to be good mothers. And part of the conversation I had last week with a patient that I want to share with you is this idea of breaking the cycle. And I think a lot of us, the way that we feel as moms, would never want that for our daughters. And I also don't want for my son to grow up thinking that if he partners with a woman, she's going to be the one to do all the things, cook all the meals, do all the laundry, wash the dishes, I refuse to send my son out into the world with those beliefs and expectations. And so if you are struggling to make changes for you, I want you to think about what you are modeling for your kids. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way. And I don't want this to be another place where you feel guilty and bad about what you've been doing. But it is an opportunity to think about, if we want something different for our kids when they become parents, we can't just tell them that it could be different. We need to show them that it's different. And what's interesting is that one of the things that puts people at risk for becoming the default parent is growing up observing the woman or mother be solely or mostly responsible for parenting and household tasks. So when our kids see us overfunctioning, and again, they get pushed into an underfunctioning role, we are setting them up to be more likely that when they grow up, they're going to find themselves in the same dynamic. And it's interesting because I think we've come to a really interesting place where we tell girls that they can be whatever they want, and girls are succeeding. Like, girls are more than 50% enrollment in universities. Like, we're doing really well in a lot of spots. But then at the same time, when we tell them, like, you can be anything you want, they're also watching, like, sure, I can be anything I want, but then I'm going to have to come home and make dinner and cook and clean and take care of everybody. And there's some, there's some dissonance there, I think we need to think about. Overfunctioning is real. It's very common. It is not benefiting you, and it's also not benefiting your kids. And I think we need to start thinking about that in a different way. So I have a few things that I'm going to encourage you to do after you listen to this episode. Number one, I want you to get out a piece of paper or a journal and a pen, and I want you to start writing down just everything that you can think of that you are doing that your kid is capable of, right? Might be making lunches, might be paying their cell phone bill, might be calling somebody. Write out anything you can think of. And then I want you to sit down with your kid and work together to choose one thing that they're going to start doing themselves or doing more proactively. And then you're going to, once that is done, you're going to circle back to this list and you're going to ideally work your way through it so that you can Allow your kid to step up. This is the other thing I didn't talk about. The level of confidence when my son pulled out those muffins that he made was incredible. Our kids, again, are going to grow and get more confident and independent when we allow them to do things they're capable of. We're really not helping them when we overfunction. We feel like we are, but we are not. I also am going to encourage you to let your kid take some risks and have some independence. If you don't know where to start or to know what is age appropriate, I want you to check out the website letgrow.org, which I'll link to in the show notes for age appropriate ideas. And the hardest part is not stopping to make the lunch. That part was easy. The hard part is acknowledging and working on our own anxieties that we project onto our kids. We need to be very thoughtful about what our definition of a good mom is and whether or not we actually agree with that definition, or if we're just trying to pattern out and live and try to do what our moms did, even though, like Jenny said, a lot of times our memories may not be very accurate. I want you to learn to take some deep breaths, especially when you're in that messy middle, when your kitchen's a mess or your kid's trying to cut something for the first time and inside you're freaking out. But I also want to remind you and have you remember that your kids are not better off with a mom who is exhausted, irritable, and overwhelmed, even if it means that they have beautiful, perfectly cut peanut butter toast. Your kids will thrive when you thrive. And overfunctioning is draining your energy. And if you can learn to overfunction a little bit less, you're going to release energy and mental space and the time to care for yourself before 9 p.m. Because like Jenny talked about, if the only time you have available for yourself is after your kids go to bed, that will never be enough. You'll never come down from a full day's work with 30 minutes before bed. So I want to encourage you to, again, just look at where you're overfunctioning. Don't judge yourself. Don't be harsh on yourself. We all do it. But where is there an opportunity for you to allow your kids to step up and open up some mental and physical energy and space for yourself? That's our episode for today. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you again here in a couple weeks. I know your time is precious, so it means so much to me that you're here. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a woman in your life who could use a little extra energy and encouragement today. It's a small way to show her you care, because we're all in this together. Wondering what the next step is? Find out what's really draining your energy by taking my fatigue fingerprint quiz at fatiguefixer.ca/quiz. You'll discover which of the 5 most common types of fatigue you're dealing with, like frazzled fatigue, where your body's exhausted but your mind won't turn off, or drained fatigue, where no amount of sleep ever feels like enough. Your results will include recommended labs to ask your doctor about, plus my top suggestions for habits and practices that can help you start feeling more rested, calm, and in control. Because here's the thing, being tired all the time isn't normal, and you deserve to feel like yourself again. And hey, if you've got a story to share, a question, or just something on your mind, leave me a voicemail. Your voice might even make it into a future episode. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not all in your head. I believe you, and we'll figure this out together. I'll see you right back here in 2 weeks.
This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.